Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. The next hour is all about the entrepreneur, why they start businesses, how they make their businesses grow, how they overcome failures and achieve success. Your host, Bob Gibbins, founder of Reata Commercial Realty, a commercial real estate advisory and tenant advocacy firm. Bob will ask probing questions to find impactful solutions that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here's Bob Gibbins.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is your host, Bob Gibbins, and we're here with another great guest this week, Michael Hinderliter with Steamaway Inc. and a bunch of other companies we're going to talk about later. And Michael has been in the power washing business for 33 years. That's a long time to be washing stuff.
Yeah.
We'll learn about that. 40 employees based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but they do have some operations elsewhere. And they do truck washing and heavy equipment washing and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but we'll get to all that here pretty soon. You can learn more about them at steamaway.com. And before we get into the thick of the conversation, I need to make an announcement for our listeners that have been with us for the last 3 years. It's a bit of a sad day, which is that Stephen Nooner is no longer with the show. He has been on a journey of pretty large proportions the last year. He sold his company, as a lot of you heard on one of our previous podcasts. And so that has taken him into some directions that unfortunately don't leave time to be doing a radio show as well. So, Stephen, we love you. We're going to miss you, and hope you come back and visit with us whenever you can. So, Michael, we usually start with what we call wisdom of others, which is a quote from someone else smarter than myself, which opens up the field considerably. And we often use the quote given to us by the guest. And this week, you gave us a quote from Winston Churchill. So that's a pretty impressive name to be thrown around. But your quote was, "Never, never, never give up." So that's not as impressive a quote as the person that gave it, but why is that so important to you?
I think for me, it's just because with business and life in general, there's always those struggles that come along. And in the back of your mind, you question whether or not you should continue to go forward. And it was very impactful to me when I first heard that quote that, a man that was in that position and even watching the recent movie, I didn't know as much as I did about it, how he just continued to push forward in spite of the odds.
That was a great movie.
Yeah.
I'm going blank on the name of it now, but it was a really good movie.
Churchill, is that what they called it?
Well, it depends on which one it was.
Which one? There were more than one.
There's one in the theater recently about a crisis at the beginning of World War II.
Yes.
And a lot of the action takes place in the underground, the bunkers where he operated, which I've actually toured those bunkers with my wife.
Oh, really?
2 years ago when we were in London. And it's pretty interesting. You can spend a lot of time down there. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, that was a great movie. Yeah. And I love a lot of his quotes. But we had another guy in the studio with us recently, Michael Patton, who has a company called Fetch, and he had a similar twist or a similar quote, but with a different twist. And his quote, which actually was him saying it, was, "Nobody cares. Work harder."
Yeah.
So you're saying never give up, but he's like, nobody cares, work harder. But it both result in the same thing, right?
Yes, they do.
And, I guess in entrepreneurship, that's one of the biggest things that we see is the unwillingness to take no for an answer, whether that's in pursuing clients, customers, or in pursuing a way to accomplish something that person wants to accomplish. They don't know how to do it. But in fact, we've had a lot of guys a lot of people here in the studio where they don't know, they're not techies, let's say, they're not programmers, but they still create an app. And I always ask them, why did you do this, or how did you do this? You're not a programmer. They're like, we knew it was needed, so we found somebody who knew what they were doing, and we created it.
Yep.
So they just kept after it, attacking it from different angles until they were able to make it happen. So whenever you were, I was reading your pre-interview information this morning, and my wife actually was reading it to me. And she's one of the things that she read was, and when we ask you the question about what's something that not everybody knows about you, you've written, I like hunting, fishing, hiking, and boating. And she said, and I bet he loves Luke Bryan too, the country music singer. So for the record, do you like Luke Bryan or not?
I don't listen to him much, but it's funny because I've had several people tell me that we look like each other. So
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
hilarious.
I don't know if that's I've seen him once or twice, and I'm like, yeah.
My wife's gonna be very upset she didn't join us today. I'm glad she didn't. So, Michael, what was the first business or first way you made money as a kid or growing up or whatever?
Yeah, it's at the time I didn't think it was a big deal. It was just like, hey, this is an idea, let's go do it. I was in second grade, and just talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking. You want to go buy this or buy that, and as kids, and you get an allowance, but it really doesn't amount to much.
No.
And started thinking about mistletoe, and he happened to mention that there was mistletoe in a tree out behind his house, and I said, well, let's go pick the mistletoe and go around the neighborhood and sell it to the neighbors, 25 cents a pop, and then we can go down and buy some gum and candy and stuff like that, and that's what we did.
Wow. How much did you make? You have any?
I wish I could remember exactly what we made. We didn't do too bad. We probably made like $5 or $10, at a quarter piece. So maybe 100 houses in the neighborhood.
So you didn't run around and put them over the girls' heads and try to convince them, put them over your head, and get them to convince you to kiss them or anything?
Yeah.
No?
We probably got slapped a couple times, but other than that, we had fun.
But I mean, that's cool because it required a little bit of personal effort, but the inventory was free.
Yeah.
So
there was just obviously it wouldn't work any other time of the year, but what really made me think about it was we were walking through the supermarket and we saw it there at the checkout aisle, mistletoe, and I was like, I can just pick that out back somewhere. We saw him in the trees and got to talking to him, and he said, "All right, let's go do it."
So, but you didn't you didn't build a whole empire of mistletoe.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, cool. I like those kinds of stories. The thing we hear most often is, I mowed lawns and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I like the mistletoe story. So, what's the first business that you started that really took off and became something that could be sold or really provided an income?
That would have been the Steamaway, which is still run it today, which is the truck washing business.
Okay.
And along the way. During Steamaway, I got into selling fireworks, and we did that. I did that a couple times when I was still in college.
Now wait a minute.
I ran a fireworks stand.
How do you start in power washing and it ends up selling fireworks? That makes no sense at all.
I'm just always thinking of different things, and it was just one summer, and we happened to drive by a fireworks stand. My stepbrother was with me, and he said he had a cousin that was in it, and he talked about how much money could be made. I said, all right, well, let's do it. And 2 days later, I had built a fireworks stand from scratch, went and bought the wood and put it together. And the interesting thing is that I had several neighbors that were driving by watching me build it. And I don't pay attention to that. I'm focused on what I'm doing. And we get the stand up, and they come by and they goes, I can't believe how fast you built that. And, I was liked and hated by parents when I grew up. One, because I was pretty mischievous was the hate part, but the like part was I was extremely industrious.
Yes.
So they would come by and give me the pat on the back and then kind of like, why aren't you hanging out more with Mike, to their kids, that kind of thing.
So how long did the fireworks business last, or
I did it for about 3 or 4 seasons.
Oh.
And then they changed the ordinance there in the city of Burleson, so I would sit right outside the city limits and sell fireworks.
Yep.
And I had a really good stand, expanded, and went down toward Alvarado and put a stand up down there. And then eventually it inspired me to try to do in that amount of time what I could make with the firework business, to do the same thing in the power washing side, the truck washing side. It became my goal to make that kind of income in a couple of weeks, like I could in firework business with the power washing, and then do it year round.
Huh.
So
Because the fireworks is what, only 4th of July and New Year's?
yeah, yeah. And really the only season that matters is the 4th of July.
Okay.
You know, you can sell them the other times, but it's probably not worth your time.
Well, with all the fire bans now,
Oh, yeah.
and the
especially.
drought, you can't
Yeah.
even do that half the time, it seems.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
I have a little bit of a pyro in my blood, so it's very enjoyable. I'd fire everything off, knew what worked good, and
So did you sell the business or did it burn down?
no, I just stopped doing it.
Just stop doing it.
Yeah, I
You
just
didn't
stopped
hand it
doing
off to anybody or
Yeah,
anything?
I didn't hand it off or anything.
I mean, if it was making that kind of money, why not?
Yeah, I probably should have,
Just
but,
didn't think about it?
but yeah.
Interesting.
It's like any other business. Location is primary, and what happened is the city of Burleson enacted an ordinance. So I moved my stand, and it didn't do that well, and so I decided forget about it. Well, the next season they revoked the ordinance for 1 year and then put the ordinance back.
Oh,
So I was like, yeah, you know, I don't want to be doing something that is at the whim of
Yeah.
city regulation. So that's what turned me off to it.
yeah. I don't blame you a bit.
And I didn't see the opportunity unless unless I had more control. And I think that when a lot of people think about entrepreneurship, they think of people who take extreme risks. But I actually think entrepreneurs take controlled risks.
Yes.
And they weigh all the options and they figure out what's going to be the less risk, and then they go with it.
Mhm.
And they're usually in pretty good control. And with that, I wasn't in control, and I didn't see that changing. But
Right.
I didn't want to find myself in that position again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I can't imagine being at the whim of some bureaucrat who says yes or no,
Yeah.
get out of bed to change it.
And you had the
So-
fire department that was very much in favor of it, but
In favor of,
the ordinance,
oh, okay.
yeah. And I don't know how they ended up getting it revoked that 1 year, but it didn't last long.
No, I wouldn't
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, so you're doing both those things at the same time, power washing and the fireworks. You get rid of the fireworks, you keep doing the power washing.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been doing that for 33 years, but you
Yes.
started in high school?
I started in high school, so the 33 years are the years of being in business. The 4 years before that are the years working for my dad in his manufacturing and distribution business, where I learned how to repair a power washer and understand all the mechanics of it
Okay.
as we went through it.
Well, let's pick that up on the other side. We need to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Fern, and I've been an empowered team member at Alkali for over 5 years. I first learned about Alkali through an online job board and was intrigued to learn that Alkali was a Dave Ramsey endorsed local provider. But what captivated me was Alkali's mission statement, which is closely aligned with my own beliefs. So what's kept me at Alkali for over 5 years? First, Alkali's 5 core values match my own. Second, I've been empowered to use my unique abilities to impact our community, our clients, and Alkali. If you'd like to learn more about becoming an empowered Alkali team member, visit our website, alkaliservices.com. That's ALKALI services.com.
Welcome back. We're here with Michael Hinderliter of Steamaway, and you can find out more of them at steamaway.com. And so before the break, we were talking about your experience working for your dad and doing power washing. So he had a non-power washing company, but you were doing power washing for him, or he was doing
No.
that
Actually,
too?
when we moved to the DFW area from Wichita, Kansas, he was in the Air Force. He had a engineering degree, and he worked for, I believe, Boeing and Cessna for different spurts there when he was in Wichita. And eventually he decided that he wanted to be in a business, and he picked power washing.
Okay.
And I don't know how they met up. I don't remember the story exactly, but he met a guy there, and he worked for the guy 6 months on the weekends learning the trade. He worked for him for free to learn how. And
Wow.
I think they mostly did fleet washing there as well.
For 6 months, he
For
worked
6
for
months
free.
for free. And the guy would train him and teach him everything he knew, with the caveat that he didn't do business in that market. So once he learned it, then he moved here to DFW with the focus, primarily because the highway system. There, the I-35 goes all the way to Canada and to Mexico, and then
Right.
you got I-20 that goes from coast to coast. So that's one of the reasons they picked this. They saw it him and my mom saw this as a growth area
Sure.
in the United States, and which ends up being quite accurate.
So he just bought the equipment he needed and moved
yeah,
here and
Came here.
started business. And
he was
you were how old at that point?
contract cleaner. I was in kindergarten or first grade.
Okay, so
My
you
first
grew
grade.
up with this from a young age.
Yeah.
So when did you actually start working in the business?
I was in ninth grade. So all through high school, I worked in the business, and then my senior year in high school, about halfway through, and it was January of '85. I was deciding, you know what? I think I'm smarter than Dad. I need to do something on my own. And he really didn't negate that or try to tell me different. It was like he saw that I had a motivation and a desire to run a business, and he encouraged it. Everything I did, I even had the lawn mowing business for a short period of time.
Of course you did.
Yeah, like most guys.
So when you went out on your own after high school, what did you just directly go into power washing?
Well, I was still in high school when I did it.
Okay.
I don't know if I understood the question correctly when I moved out, but
Okay.
I was still in power washing. I was still going to school, and once I finished high school, I've been in business for 5 months, and I started off with a partnership with my best friend that lived across the street. That didn't last very long. As with most partnerships, one of the things that I had somebody tell me, because I was kind of getting frustrated, but I didn't understand the frustration. I didn't have any management skills at all, like any high school kid. We're still learning things, and no real direction. But I had somebody tell me that in any partnership, it shouldn't be a partnership where both parties are doing the exact same thing. A partnership is where two parties come together that offer and complement one another.
Right.
And so he started asking me what I was doing and what my buddy was doing. And we were all doing the same thing, but I was actually doing it, and he was kind of going out and doing half the work on the weekends with us.
Tagging along.
And so he goes, well, that's your problem. You should never think that way. And that always stuck with me from that point on, because I've had several opportunities for people to want to partner. I said, okay, well, tell me how we complement one another. And usually it's like, well, no, we'll do it together. I'm like, we're not doing anything together. We're going to complement each other.
That's a good idea, because you're right. So many times they think they're just doing the same thing. They're just doubling the effort, doubling the manpower. Therefore, they're going to get double the work. But a lot of times that doesn't turn out to be the case.
Yeah, and it's still tough, even when you're complimenting one another, where one person still thinks their contribution is more than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So partnerships are always hard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So whenever you did this business then, were you at that point competing with your dad?
No, because he was selling equipment. He got into selling and manufacturing equipment and kind of moved out of the contracting side, because I think for him, he somewhat saw that there weren't any, the industry was still pretty much in its infancy at that point. And there weren't any big contract cleaning companies out there where it had developed a lot of staff, and you had a president or CEO of somewhat that was running the business, but not really having to go out and perform the work. So anybody who had any kind of longevity was still an owner operator out behind the gun, and long hours in the sun, soap overspray that gets all over you, and it can have an effect on you. But I've got guys that are working for me that are the early 50s, but a guy 60 or 70 years old is really not a place to be. And I think that's one reason he went into the other side, and he started he did quite well in the oil and gas industry and had a lot of growth until, and he always refers to it, and I don't know it, but I believe it was Penn Bank fell in the 80s, and it brought down the oil and gas industry, and along with it went his business, because that was his primary customer base. And from there he got into, because he had the knowledge of contract cleaning, he started educating contract cleaners and selling to contract cleaners across the United States.
Gotcha. So he had a much bigger market to do that. So you became a contract cleaner?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you're now a customer of your dad. How did you go out and
Yes.
get customers, and what kind of customers were you trying to reach?
Well, because I was in school and my plan was to go into college, weekend work was what I wanted to go after, and fleet washing was 70 to 100% weekend work. So I really didn't go after the week stuff. I went after all the weekend work, and I could find fleets on the weekends. And back then, more so than today, but still today, customers had a problem with finding reliable contract cleaners, and not only that they showed up like they were supposed to, but did quality and consistent work.
Yeah.
So that's still what we focus on and providing to our customers.
So at 18, you were able to convince a business owner that you were going to be that reliable guy?
Not always.
Not always?
Because, and I think this happens with every generation that, especially now, even when I look at the younger kids, I'm like, oh, golly, they were nothing like us. But then I think that, I heard the same thing when I was that age.
Yeah.
But, generally there was some convincing, of someone and all the way up, because I've been blessed to look younger than I am, probably up into my early 40s, that the covert question would be, well, how long have you been in business?
Yes.
Because they want to find out how old you are, what kind of experience you have. Early on, I was fortunate enough to find a fairly decent sized account, and the partner of the company had a son that was real close to my age, and he basically gave me the work because I was knocking on his door asking for it. And my dad had told me that would happen. He said he had gotten work before just because he was out there being aggressive, and business owners and entrepreneurs like to see that.
Yeah.
He said, so if you go out and call and be consistent with it, you'll get work. And later on, I found out from this gentleman that was the main reason he gave it to me. And he'd even sent his son to come talk to me about how I got in business and where I was going and stuff. And
So he hired you because he wanted you to be the example for his son.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's like I can believe that. Well, so you're building this business. It's you're young, you're growing it. At what point did you stop being the guy behind the gun, as you put it, and being the guy running the business instead of being in the business?
Yeah, that took some time. It took me 6 years to get through college, so I was still behind the gun all that time on the weekends. And then and I graduated in 91, so it took a couple years of me deciding whether or not I wanted to continue with the business or go get a job. And I eventually realized that I wanted to stay in the business. And I would say it was probably around the early 2000s, mid 2000s, where I got to where I wasn't behind the gun so much and started working more staff. And then it was back and forth for a long time as my management skills got better at hiring and firing and whatnot, and learning how to manage people. And it's still, for me, it's still a work in progress. But I think I'm becoming a lot more honed in it and skilled in my abilities to recognize the right people that I want on the team, and when it's time to mentor.
Sure.
You want to be mentoring all the time, and decide when the team's more important than the individual, and you may have to cut somebody from the team. And that's hard. Yeah, it is hard, and it's difficult at times, and sometimes, usually, and now it's becoming more of a thing because of our processes and things. That it's not so much where I just have to cut somebody, but they kind of realize it themselves. And I've heard that a lot as I've been learning more and getting more skilled at this, that would happen. But now it's starting to happen more so than I have to.
They
see it.
self-select themselves out before you have to do it?
Because they know deep down that they can't perform at that level, or they've bitten off more than they can chew, or they really just don't have the desire.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. There are always different levels of personality traits and characteristics that people have.
Yeah.
And they excel in some areas, and other areas they don't.
What was it about you that when you graduated from college, you knew that you didn't want to just go get another job, that you decided you wanted to stick with something of your own?
I think it was still a struggle for me when I graduated from college, whether or not I wanted to do that.
Was there some event that
I had a strong desire. I felt like I had an internal conflict actually going on within me, because I had a strong desire to still build a business and still be in control of my destiny. But at the same time, I didn't, and I see it with young guys today even still. And I think it's a personal thing where they're trying to decide where they want to be in their lives.
Yeah.
And then once you realize that there's a point where, no, I'm just going to commit full time to it and go, then all this other questioning whether I should be here goes away. And that probably happened, I would say probably the late 90s.
Okay.
Or,
so you
or
just gotta
mid-90s.
Make
when I
that
finally-
decision,
yeah.
and then
It
and
took
then
me
do it.
another 5 or 6 years after college before I decided that's what I wanted to do.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're back. The next level, and we're here talking to Michael Hinderliter, and he is with Steamaway, and you can find out more about them at steamaway.com. So, Michael, you were talking earlier about, all the employees and how you've grown from, this being your own business with, basically yourself, and now you've got in Steamaway about 40 employees. That's a lot of people out power washing.
Mm-hmm.
So what are all those people doing? I mean, those aren't 40 guys on behind the guns, as you call it. I'm sure you have other administrative people and salespeople and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But what were the points at which you knew that you needed all these other people, and how did you develop them?
Yeah. I think for me, it's probably not the smartest way to go about it, but it's when I realized I was overloaded and I needed to hire someone to help me get things done. That's when I started hiring people.
So you got the business that was overwhelming you before you went out and found the additional people?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that's what a lot of people do, right?
Right. It's probably a standard practice for most, but
Well, and that's because we want the revenue to
Yeah.
justify the person.
exactly.
We don't want
yeah.
to buy the person or get the person and
Yeah,
betting that the revenue
get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, yeah. So, so that's how I did it and started adding staff. And obviously, when I first started washing and doing it, as I grew, then I would get a helper and then another helper, and started slowly developing my ability to read people better. And
How many people did you have before you quit doing the work yourself and just become a manager of the company?
I was probably around that 20 to 30 people.
Wow.
Where
so you have 30 people and you're still
I would
behind the
still
gun
be
too?
going out behind the gun and doing work. Now, that's not that I was out there full time, but I would still have to go out and fill in.
Okay.
Because the thing about fleet washing is you have a limited time frame to go out and provide the service. And I'm very big about not giving the customer excuses as to why we can't do it,
Right.
but that it got done regardless of what obstacles kept me from getting it done. And one of them could be staff not showing up for work. So if I got to get out there and do the truck washing, then I got to get out there and do the truck washing.
Yeah. Understand.
And fortunately now we got a pretty good sized staff, so if someone doesn't show up, we've got alternates that we can call and fill in those spots.
Right. So what did you do to develop your abilities to manage folks and to hire the right people?
It's early on and it's hard to explain, but I just got better at reading people and asking questions, and nowadays you can research on the internet and find hiring questions and interview questions that are extremely helpful. But I think back before the internet was that popular or really took off, I had found a couple of articles or books that had those questions in them that I was able to ask, and I networked with other business owners that had questions that they gave me as well, and I used those. And I don't think I wish I could say some of my questions were original, but I probably tweaked them a little bit to suit my situation, and I found those that I thought I liked and were more impactful to the job that we're hiring. So especially when you're hiring for management or office staff or somebody who's in operations, they're easy to find questions like that. I think there's a different level of questions you ask the tech that you want to hire,
Right.
and they're a little simpler. They're not as in depth, and for the most part, you want to find a guy that, he's not afraid to work weekends.
Oh, yeah.
That's the big deal. And
so are
that's
most of your
our first.
employees
yeah.
like this is a second job for them?
It can be, but I don't want a second job for for employees. I want them to be full-time because
Okay.
what I found is if I had part-time employees, then it was there till they didn't need the money anymore, and then they just stopped showing up.
Right.
So I want full-time employees that are going to be dedicated to us, and we'll be dedicated to them.
So you're a pretty scrappy entrepreneur here because you're going to the internet for your questions to hire people. You're not hiring some HR consultant to help you and figuring out how to set up the systems to do that.
Correct. Yeah.
And have you done that with all aspects of the business?
Not necessarily. I think as time has gone on, I've realized that there are consulting groups out there, and even like I referred to books earlier. I really didn't read a lot of books early on either. I think I've had to learn too that my ego has gotten in the way of my success, and I think that sometimes I know better than anybody else, but I don't, and as I continue to lead more and get more involved with learning that aspect of it. One of the things that's come out to me over the past couple of years is that, a lot of times people's success is hindered by their ego and their pride, because they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and then they can become so vested in their success and their ideas and fall so in love with their ideas that if anybody ever challenges them or the way they do things, they dig in even harder and resist. But sometimes those opportunities to realize you're doing something not as good as you should be taken a lot more seriously.
I had a client recently who we were in the middle of a negotiation to buy a building for them, for their business, and they were very frustrated with the seller and some of the things the seller was doing or not doing. And when we finally got to a point where we were in the last issue to negotiate, they wanted to bring up other issues as a way to just sort of get back. Like, well, then I'm going to do this. I got to get this from them. I just want them to suffer a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I understand that. But at this point, you're hurting yourself when you do that, because it's only about your ego and sort of revenge, whatever you want to call it. You feel like you got to get your pound of flesh like you think they're getting out of you.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're a big boy. You can either say no to this. You don't have to do this deal. We'll go find another building. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you. And trying to get a little dig into them isn't going to do you any good.
No.
And it's only going to hurt your reputation in the long run too.
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know when this came upon me, but at an early age, hiring employees, something clicked within me that told me that my employees were just as important as my customers. And my mindset went to hiring and treating employees as I would a customer, and trying to understand what they valued and what would make someone want to work for me, and asking myself, would I work for me? And so I started molding my organization around that thought process, which was ultimately very beneficial.
Did you change anything specific as a result of that?
I can't really say, because
kind of a gradual thing.
Well, I think that to an extreme, I probably mentored people I shouldn't have a lot longer than I should have, because of that thought process. But as I've, especially over the past 5 or 6 years, and learning more about what should be more important, where I should focus more on the results side of things, that I don't do that like I used to.
Yeah.
I don't mentor too long anymore, and I kind of move into some tactics and applying some things. So if someone needs to go off the team quicker, they do.
Yeah. I have a client who he used to be involved in all the hiring very early on in the process, but he eventually took himself out of that hiring process because he realized that he is so passionate about the company that he would be trying to sell the prospective employee on the company,
right,
and totally overlook whether or not that person was really appropriate for the company or for the specific job that they were being interviewed for. Yeah. And so he kind of had to remove himself. And so they go through this, 3 or 4 or 5 interview process. And by the time they get to him, he's just a rubber stamp. He's
smart.
The easiest interview these people ever have. Now, the prospective employee is all uptight because they think, all right, now I'm talking to the big dog now.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the least of not even the closest thing to the truth, because, it's just sort of, all right, done, and then they're hired.
And that's a practice we've incorporated now too. So it's not just one person that does all the interview and hiring. So our onboarding process now is they do the application. If that looks like it meets our requirements, then we probably have them do a survey of some type, asking some questions. And it's usually part of the application. Well, actually, the survey comes first, then the application. I got that backwards. Then they'll meet with, and I now have an HR person, thank goodness. Such a relief for me. And once it goes through the HR, then it goes on to the actual supervisor.
Okay.
And then we like to have a ride-along so they can actually get to see or get a good understanding of what the job's going to be like. And from there, they get hired.
Interesting.
And when I'm hiring for top positions, something I like to say to applicants when they come in and we sit down and go through the process, and I say this, hiring a new person or interviewing a new person is kind of like marriage. Right now we're dating. We're kind of figuring each other out, and then if we go through the dating process, that goes good, and we decide to get married, then it'll be the honeymoon after you hire, and the honeymoon's always great for a few months, and once the honeymoon's over, then we find out if we're really going to work good together.
Honeymoon's only a few months.
Yeah.
So I was looking on your website, and I noticed that there were some really big pieces of equipment, and so this business may be a little more to it than I was expecting. Who is your ideal client? I know you've talked a lot about fleets, but
Yeah.
what does that really look like?
Most of our fleet clients are going to have 50 pieces of equipment up to 1,000 pieces of equipment.
And what kind of equipment are we talking about?
We're tractors and trailers, like the big rigs that are up and down the freeways over the road.
Okay, so
And
not the backhoes and all that.
not so much. We do a little bit of that, but most of what we do are the tractor trailer fleets.
Because they're more concerned with keeping them clean, whereas the heavy equipment, it's like, I'm just going to get it dirty tomorrow. Why do it?
Well, another thing too is when they're going down the road, it's enforcement wise when it comes to DOT. Generally, if a piece of equipment is dirty, it's probably not maintained good either. So that it's like a red flag for
the
inspection.
police know that too.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah.
I got stopped for having a tail light out. and really, statistically, if your car has a headlight or a tail light out, you have a much greater chance of that person having been involved in some sort of accident or a crime or violation of some sort. Anyway, we're going to have to take another quick break. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Bob Gibbins with Reata Commercial Realty. If your office lease is going to be expiring in the next year or two, the one thing I would tell you definitely do not want to do is exercise a renewal option. Now, that may sound a little nuts. When you negotiate for that renewal option, why wouldn't you actually want to use it? Well, the reason is because while you want to have one as a reservation for your space so the landlord can't lease the space out from under you, that option may not actually work the way you want it to now. It may have made sense 5 years ago, but it doesn't today. The only thing that changes when you exercise a renewal option are the expiration date and the rent. But you may want to do other things like have another option to renew, have an option to terminate or expand. You may want to be able to expand now or have a new base year for your operating expenses. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. So we recommend that you renegotiate, not renew. For more information, contact me, Bob Gibbins, at texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com. Welcome back to The Next Level. We're here talking to Michael Hinderliter, Steamaway, and he's at steamaway.com. So, Michael, a lot of times I think of this industry, Steamaway, this power washing industry, and a lot of the trades, we'll call it, as being sort of a old economy kind of industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very interested in one of your responses in our pre-interview materials. You said something about AI, artificial intelligence, and it just kind of shocked me for a second because I'm thinking, wait a minute, what does AI have to do with this old economy kind of a company? So fill me in here. What is that about?
I kind of have to build up to it a little bit.
Okay, that's fine.
Because the things that we see today, I saw this coming back when I was in college. And the things I'm talking about are like apps that are on your phone, mobile phones and when I was in college, we didn't have mobile phones.
Right.
We had a car phone.
Yeah.
We didn't have a mobile phone that you can carry in your back pocket and can do all the things that it's doing now. And the classes, I took a few classes that were information technology type things, and I listened to some trending type materials that come out once a month that kind of tell me about all the new advances and things that are going on. So I kind of got an idea in the back of my head of when things are going to come to be.
Okay.
So, the AI capabilities are quite phenomenal when you think about where they're going to go. And I think as a whole, most of us completely underestimate where and how fast the technology is going to advance, because it's going to advance at an increasing rate. So what we've seen in the past has been slow compared to how it's going to go in the future. And I think as it comes on, technology will roll out faster than we can adapt to it. And I think it'll have a huge impact and a displacement on our workforce. And that has me concerned as a business owner, because I know that if there's a product that comes out that can start washing fleets or doing some of the other services we provide, it can displace my company pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So my hope is that I can kind of watch that and keep abreast of it, and maybe position myself in the right place at the right time to have some of this equipment.
So everybody's talking about the self-driving car, but you're worried about the self-driving power washer.
Exactly. Yeah. I believe that technology will eventually come, and I've actually debated online with a couple of people, and they talk about how hard it is to program and that kind of stuff. But if you look at any of this and see what Microsoft, Google, Apple, they're doing, is that they're developing the technology to programs that program, and they learn from their programming.
Yes.
So it's not going to be that a human is sitting there programming, creating these programs. It's going to be some type of AI that's doing it, and that's what's going to speed things along. IBM, Watson, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this accumulation of information that's beyond our ability to comprehend it as a human, but a piece of machinery that can do it and put all these different pieces together and make it work.
Right.
And then as the physical piece of machinery is developed, that may be the thing that slows it down more than anything. It's not so much the programming side of it, but the equipment that can be able to do it and withstand and hold up. It goes back and forth, but I think it'll eventually, and I don't know that it'll be in my working lifetime that I see it,
Mm-hmm.
or if it'll be toward the end of that. But I think it's highly likely it'll be seen in the next 15 to 20 years.
I mean, it's just another kind of innovation. It's just
It
another
is,
kind of
exactly.
technology, and we've had these forever.
Yes.
My daughter lives in Washington, D.C., and we just went to visit her a couple of weeks ago, and we finally got into the African American Museum. It's been open for 2 years. It still has like a 6-month waiting list to get in.
Oh, wow.
We just went and stood in the standby line for an hour and 45 minutes, and we finally got in. And we spent 4 hours inside, and we only got to half of the museum. So it's a fantastic museum. I highly recommend it. But the thing that I walked away with that struck me the most was that, growing up, we heard about like technology like the cotton gin. Eli Whitney created this cotton
Mm-hmm.
gin, and wasn't it so wonderful? And it increased the speed of production of clothing and thread and all this kind of thing, because he could sift through the cotton faster or whatever. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but the unintended consequences I never thought about. And that cotton gin increased the efficiency and the speed of processing cotton by 39 or 4,900%. That's unbelievable. But what did that have to do to the supply side? So all of a sudden, the slaves that were picking that cotton, their quotas also went through the roof. And so their lives got incredibly worse because of people trying to feed that cotton gin. And that was a totally unintended consequence of that cotton gin, I'm sure. And so, now as we have all these other kinds of technology, I always wonder, what is the unintended consequence? Sure, it's going to displace some workers. We know that. But what else is it going to do that we don't think of? That we
Right.
haven't, we have no idea where it's going to go. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's an interesting idea to talk about and debate.
And probably the thing that may impact my industry more than anything is the autonomous driving trucks, the rigs, because now it's not a driver. One of the reasons we get hired to wash trucks is because the driver's time and DOT regulations really shouldn't be allotted to washing a truck. He needs to be delivering and picking up loads to be effective and economical for the company.
Right.
So they don't want their drivers doing that. But if you have an autonomous truck out there, it doesn't matter anymore. All it has to do is go hook up to a trailer and drive through a wash bay, and they're done.
And they can drive around the clock, basically. And
Sure. Or go to a facility that has a wash bay. So that may be the future. There might not be much mobile operation for fleet washing anymore at some point.
Interesting.
And
So
that probably is the most likely scenario.
So have you considered investing in standalone, stationary washing?
Yeah, I have one now, actually.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where is that located?
It's at 2300 Cold Springs Road in Fort Worth,
Okay.
and that's where the rest of my operation is.
You have a website for that one too?
Yeah, it should be on that website as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, steamaway.com, 2300, what was it, 2300
Cold Springs Road.
Cold Springs Road.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you've obviously already started preparing for that. You have any plans to open up more of those elsewhere?
We may. It again, it's all about location. And I kind of just happened into that one, and there wasn't any competition in my area for years. Now I've got a competitor. But prior to that, we were the only game, and we've built up a ton of traffic off of that location, and
Sure.
we're very well known for it. So, drivers get on the CBs, they know where to send them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you've diversified into that. What else? What other things, unintended consequences, so to speak, of starting a power washing business have? I mean, are there other businesses that you've started that have been a result of this power washing?
Yes. Just because you can do so many things with a power wash, use a power washer. On the commercial side, there's the kitchen exhaust cleaning, which I got into in '95. I bought out a competitor around the following year, '96, and that was an experience when I bought first major competitor that I bought out, and he had several employees, a couple of crews working for him, and I found that none of them qualified for what I needed to do. But I don't want to get too sidetracked there.
Wow.
So it took me 2 years to turn that around, but got into kitchen exhaust cleaning. And eventually,
And when you say kitchen exhaust, you're talking about for like restaurants?
yes, restaurants, commercial
Okay.
restaurant, commercial cooking
Gotcha.
facilities. It could be manufacturing facilities and plants as well
Okay.
that have the kitchen exhaust system. So we cleaned those.
And you can use the same equipment that you
For the
do
most part,
fleets?
yeah. There's
Oh.
a slight difference. You don't need as much equipment for the kitchen exhaust side, but you need more materials and setup. There's more breakdown for that.
And is the time that you do that work different than the time of day?
Definitely.
Does that have to be done at night or
Yes.
early morning?
Yeah, all night. We run crews at night. So, and you
wow.
find the individual that wants to work at night. So, again, make sure that who you hire wants to do those time frames.
Yeah, not me.
yeah. That's
So-
why that was so hard, because I thought I could run a truck washing business during the day and do that at night, and who knows what I was thinking.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, so did you hire somebody else to run that business now? or-
Eventually, I grew it to a point, and I bought a brand. Facilitech was the first national brand out there, and they were purchased by Ecolabs. And the thing about kitchen exhaust cleaning is it's not a very easy business to manage or run, and several large players have tried to do it, and from a purchase and on a purchase and roll into their current book of business, and it didn't work out. So it sold, and a friend of mine had bought it, and he did it for a couple of years, and then broke it up into several different pieces, and I bought one of the pieces
Okay.
and have been fortunately quite successful with
How,
it.
how frequently does a exhaust in a kitchen need to be?
Good question. Normally, on average, about every 3 months.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's way more frequent than I would have expected.
Yeah, on average, it's about every 3 months.
And
It
so
varies on
Every restaurant out there needs to have this done every 3 months.
Oh yeah. It's highly out of all the things you can do at power washing, it's probably the most. I don't want to say regulated, but it's probably the most needed, because we're reducing the risk of fire.
Oh yeah.
That grease in there is fuel for a fire, and if you remove the fuel, then there can't be a fire. If the You got the three corners of the fire triangle: oxygen, heat, and fuel. So if you remove a corner of it, there's no fire.
Interesting. So any other businesses you haven't mentioned so far?
Yeah.
We've got 45 seconds.
45 seconds. There's Phil Ackland Training, which is kitchen exhaust cleaning. So
Okay.
we do training. And then I bought my dad's business in 2010,
Oh, cool.
which was the power washing side. And because he was doing a lot of training, all that came together. So which is now powerwash.com and Power Wash University.
Oh,
So
wow.
we do.
And that's a much bigger scale geographically, I assume, than just
It is.
PFW.
It is, yeah. So powerwash.com, we sell 48 states into Canada, and Power Wash University is online and local training, boot camps that we do, or live training.
Awesome.
So-
Michael, thank you so much for being our guest today.
bet.
Really enjoyed it. There's way more to this business than I would have ever dreamed. So for our listeners, please go to powerwash.com, go to steamaway.com. You got any other .coms you want to plug real quick?
Sure. Facilitech Southwest, which is,
Okay.
And it's facilitech-sw.com.
All right.
There's philacklandtraining.com
Cool.
and powerwashu.com.
All right. We're at nextlevelshow.com. See you next week with another great guest.